Hi, and welcome to Sauntering with God. Welcome to your new life. When do we know that God's working in and through us versus us working for God, which in the long run doesn't produce fruit that lasts or eternal fruit? This is the question I asked myself back in January of 2018 when I began as what I ended up calling a spiritual detox. For the next three podcasts, Ron Truman, my good friend and partner in ministry, is going to interview me. I thought that was the best format. He's going to be asking me some questions about my detox and about how do we know when God is really working through us. Each segment, I will introduce it, and then at the end, I'll recap and I'll preview the next segment. I really hope this is helpful for you. Thanks for watching.
So, Gary, when I met you, the thing that intrigued me the most was putting two words together, spiritual and detox. I'd never heard of that before, quite frankly. And I've been working with people coming out of rehab, and some people, as they get ready to go into rehab, they literally go into a detox mode. And I know it from that perspective, but I'd never thought of it connected to my spirituality or to spirituality and faith.
Well, it's not it's not what I started off calling it. Basically, what happened was I've been a pastor for, pushing 40 years at the time. And I saw America changing, and I just came to be frustrated with what pastor had become to mean culturally in America, and what I felt my heart yearning to be. And so I'm a hiker. I began to go into the woods, and for hours, days, and weeks, not come home at night, but I would spend just days and weeks on end, in the woods and just trying to hear God. And I was amazed about how much clutter and how much noise there was in my head, because as a pastor, Ron, you're called on to do a lot of things. You're building a church, you're trying to get a worship service going so people will come to it, ministries to offer that will help them to stay. But yet I was pastoring this church, but I was also mentoring these men. And it's funny, the men really weren't a part of the church, and the church really wasn't a part of the mentoring, and I was just feeling just really pulled. And then there's another aspect of my life too, is that I've always been involved in the community, really on a national level. I was involved in education and promoting marriage and family, even opening up an office in Washington, D.C. for a number of years, working with Congress and in certain areas related to marriage and family. And so I've always been just real busy, and but yet feeling like in many ways just spinning my wheels.
So busyness equals productivity. Right?
Well, you got to be busy to be productive, but it doesn't necessarily equal it, because I found that a lot of my victories were very short-lived. That when you're dealing in government and politics,
you didn't feel like there was any lasting value. Things could just be taken away really quickly.
So, and I got to the point to were we even preaching the gospel the way that Jesus taught it? Were we making disciples the way that Jesus did it? Was the church was the American church what Jesus meant it to be when he said, I will build my church? And so
let's get maybe into some of the detail.
When God started, I didn't anticipate God taking away a lot of things. I didn't anticipate, for example, resigning the church in 2020, July 2020. I didn't anticipate totally and completely getting out of the political side. There was a lot of, there was some devastating times in this for me. I didn't realize how much of my passion and my identity was in performance or into production of certain things like a church or getting a certain person elected into office or things. And I found out that my passion really wasn't in Christ. I loved Christ, but about the best way I can describe it, I loved Christ, but I was in love with building a church and in love with America. I think the Detox is has definitely reversed that. I love the church and I love America, but I'm in love with Christ.
So when Paul says, for me to live is Christ,
yes,
and then to die is gain, you knew in your heart that, or it began to unfold to you. You began to, as you let go of things, and letting go, I think, is a huge concept.
It
here.
is.
What happened? What are some of the things that you had to let go of? And then how did you start to begin seeing this whole idea of where you were placing your identity, or your misplaced identity? Well,
it's not so clear cut as what things were I had to let go. It was at first just having to live with the fact that I wasn't producing anything at first. So I think the first thing I had to let go of was the fact that God wasn't calling me to produce anything, and that American concept of production, accumulation of things, needing recognition, all that's penetrated the church. So when you take away my involvement politically, and you take away my involvement in trying to build a church, and you take away 95% of everything I am, and then all of a sudden I'm lost. I have no identity, and it was very depressing. Matter of fact, Cindy, my wife, got so worried about me at one point that she just asked me one night at dinner, "Gary, are you okay?" I said, "Yeah, no, I'm not. God has taken away everything that's dear to me." And I didn't realize how dear it was, but He's taking away everything that I anchored my identity in. And I'm learning that really I'm not in love with Christ. I'm in love with other things, and now I'm learning that I'm doing this emotional heart shift. So I asked her not to try to rescue me from my pain, but I also said, don't get concerned. I'm not going off the deep end. But Ron, this was a real emotional, devastating time of mourning for me, of learning to reorient my passion to where Jesus truly is my heart, and to be like Paul, the only thing I know is Jesus Christ and Him crucified.
Another way to look at it is you were having to just be.
Just be.
And am I okay? Just
being
quiet, being, not that you weren't active. I'm sure that this period wasn't just, I'm just sitting around and doing nothing.
Well, I wasn't doing nothing, but most of it was searching.
Right.
I was still preaching on Sundays, but it was a time of several weeks of just intense personal evaluation and doing nothing, not because I was trying to do nothing, was because I had nothing to do. It was just a real wilderness wandering experience. Wandering, in other words, it's almost like my heart was trying to detach to a new passion, it was trying to attach to a new passion. And I didn't realize that the only passion I needed was in Christ. And the only affirmation I needed was His affirmation. And my significance was in Him. Now, when that started to reorient, everything started to come together.
Which is all pretty amazing, because you've been a Christian since you were 8?
7.
7? And you've been in full-time ministry from 18 or
17.
17.
Yes.
Most of those years as a senior pastor, and you thought you were right, you were doing everything the way God wanted you to do it.
And I think
and
that's
your eyes
it.
were opening.
I think that's it, Ron. I was doing what I was doing it. And the thing that my detox period taught me was that God hasn't called me to do anything. He simply has called me to submit to Him, to die to myself so that He might accomplish what He's doing through me.
So
and that's what's made the difference.
So talk more about that in the context of how when we're in the wilderness, we're out of our comfort zone. We're in a new environment. It's risky. It's scary. I mean, just think of a wilderness. We're out of our comfort zone. And so you were out of your comfort zone. You were vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And so talk about that.
Well, I've learned that we're not, maturity is not about how much we know. Maturity is about how much of our life isn't about us anymore. And that even in pursuits of God, if it's us doing the pursuing, and if it's us doing the work, if it's us trying to make it happen, it is still coming to nothing. That the only thing that truly matters is what Christ is doing. I kind of likened it to
is what He's doing.
What He's doing
through us as we get rid. How would you say it? As we get rid of ourselves.
Yes.
As we put ourselves aside.
Yes. Jesus said, "Deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me."
Well, this detox that you just finished listening to this first segment about, I didn't realize it was going to be near as involved as it was. But I soon learned that there were 3 phases of this detox. It was going to be the letting go phase, which you just heard about in session 1. Next session, you're going to listen to and watch what happened to me in the second phase, which I just termed rest. It's learning how to be content and basically doing nothing and just being, as me and Ron talked about in that last segment. If you're interested in what more about spiritual detox, or maybe thinking about going on one yourself, reach out to me. My email is gary@reachamerica.org. And as always, it's so good to have you listening in on these podcasts. And I hope to see you on the trail of life. Happy sauntering.